John's definitively was cleared, and I scored a 4.5 out of 5. 5 is definitely no match.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. This analysis is drawn from the last 3 pages of narrative in the book John Bonet, The Police Files, pages 399 to 401. If you want to argue that the writers of that narrative were tabloid journalists and thus the analysis lacks all merit, you're welcome. If you feel strongly about it, you also might want to stop this video right here if you've made up your mind and take your dog and your mindset for a walk. Tabloid or not, the tabloids managed to get their hands on the exact transcripts from John and Patsy's police interrogations, and they studied them. Believe it or not, the tabloids were all over the story initially, like flies on you-know-what. By the end of the book, it seems the National Enquirer writers, had their own theory on what happened and who did what. We'll deal with that in a separate analysis. Before we begin with the 4th sample of Patsy's handwriting, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis meaningful, useful, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. April 12th, 1997 was Patsy's 4th session, conducted by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, where her handwriting would be tested and evaluated once again. It's unclear why the CBI were persisting with Patsy. Was it because circumstantially they thought it was Patsy, because it was her pad, and a Sharpie came from the kitchen, and some of the references in the ransom note sounded like a woman and a Southerner? Was it because whoever wrote the ransom note also wrote a practice note, wrote the note from pages taken from the middle of the writing tablet, and the tablet later returned to its normal place by the phone? Or was it because the handwriting they had collected from Patsy, samples 1, 2, and 3, was still fairly close? Not quite definitive, but close in terms of size and spacing, but then also variable. Or was it because the note itself seemed full of pageantry and fluff, including quotes from various movies? In addition, it begins formally, Mr. Ramsey, and then ends familiarly. Use that Southern common sense, John, as though the writer knows John quite well, after all. Whatever the reason, in this 4th instance, the CBI decided to try something different. They asked right-handed Patsy to write out a basic replica of the contents of the note, this time with her left hand. And suddenly, voila, they had results.
I know what you're thinking, and you're right.
If you look at Patsy's left-hand sample, the letters are way more crooked than the original ransom note. Even so, the size and the spacing of the text is quite similar, along with the fact that it's in a print style. In any event, 4 bingos emerged from this exercise, 4 words that were compelling matches to the words, not just the letters, in the ransom note. At least 2 handwriting experts, Ted Widmer and Gideon Epstein, felt that this 4th version, where Patsy used her left hand, was the most damning. When Epstein was deposed, he stated under oath, "I am absolutely certain that she wrote the ransom note." Patsy's high school teacher in Parkersburg, West Virginia, could remember Patsy being able to write with her right and left hand. When the authors of The Police Files interviewed Patsy on the same subject, and I think that was in 2001, she conceded that she could write with her left hand, but not very well. Ted Widmer, chairman of the Graphological Society of San Francisco, concluded that 24 of the 26 letters found in the ransom note looked as if they'd been written by Patsy. Widmer also suggested that Patsy may have tried to fake the sample, trying to write in a more untidy style than she was really capable of. Interestingly, when Burke Ramsey was shown a sample of the ransom note on camera on Dr. Phil, not only did he say he'd not seen it before, which in itself was quite strange, but his reasons for saying it didn't look like his mother's handwriting was simply, the reason he gave was that simply her handwriting was neater.
I don't know the details, but I know the ransom note, they think the handwriting matched.
Have you seen it? Have you read it?
I don't think I've read the whole thing. I've definitely seen pictures of it, though.
Did the handwriting look familiar to you at all? Had you seen it ever before?
No, I've never really looked at it closely because it's not something I really want to look at like a lot, you know?
Right. Does that look like her handwriting?
Honestly, looking at that, she would always bug me about having good handwriting, and she would like make me rewrite stuff to try to get me to have good handwriting, and I think it's too sloppy.
So if your handwriting is typically neat, an easy way to disguise it would be to write erratically, untidily. And there are some interesting examples of erratic words and letters that later on in the note seem to fix themselves. For example, look at the words we and that and the in the opening lines of page 1. Now look at the words that in the last 2 to 3 lines of the last page. Now look at how settled down and consistent the handwriting is on the 3rd page, especially the word the. Now, from a law enforcement perspective, there was likely a sense that the writer had tried to disguise his or her handwriting. One simple and easy way to do that was to use the opposite hand if you were ambidextrous, and when tested, if she used the other hand, well, there would be an inconsistency. It would look different. The question was whether that same writer could disguise her handwriting again. The trouble was 353 words across almost 3 pages had already been provided. That's a pretty wide net of samples. And handwriting analysis, good handwriting analysis, isn't only about the text, the shape of the letters, but also the context, the choice of words like attaché, the size of the words, the spacing between the words, and also the distance between the words and the margins. In this respect, it's difficult to cheat one's own psychology every time. Interestingly, in one of Patsy's sample letters, where she was free to choose whatever word she wanted to use, she chose to write about 2 gentlemen sitting on her right. This is a repeat of the same words in the ransom note. Something else that was said to be unique to Patsy was the phrase, and hence, which occurs on the first line of page 2. Did you know that and hence is a phrase Patsy used the following year in a 1997 Christmas newsletter? If there is a sense that the writer had tried to disguise his or her handwriting, well, the lexicon remains the same, doesn't it? It's interesting, isn't it, that Patsy being ambidextrous is one of those things you virtually never see written or discussed anywhere ever. You'd think in a general conversation about ransom notes and handwriting, this might be something that might come up in general conversation, that it might be volunteered. So why didn't it? Do you think Patsy ever put up her hand and said, "Hi, I think I should let you know I'm ambidextrous. Maybe that'll help you exclude me more quickly"? Do you think somebody else said, "Wow, did you know that Patsy's ambidextrous"? Team Ramsey was quite clever in debunking the prosecution's handwriting experts, including Epstein. They rubbished Epstein's testimony on the basis that because handwriting is subjective and an inexact science, it can never be a 100% match. And so any examiner saying that, well, it could be argued that that is unreliable or even biased. And through this argument, Epstein got thrown out of the prosecutor's handwriting team. And the defense team then also argued that I think that Sina Wong's qualifications, there was something wrong with that as well, according to them. And so Team Ramsey's experts, and I mean qualifications at the time, didn't actually have to argue the handwriting of the ransom note against these other experts. Their experts could then share their expertise unopposed. I seem to remember that they had 5 experts all saying it was extremely unlikely that Patsy wrote the note, with one of them saying there was a small chance that she may have. Now, I want you to watch this moment in an interview in 2000 on Larry King Live. I think the Ramseys were publicizing their book or something like that, when Patsy proudly explains how experts were unable to match her handwriting to the ransom note.
John's definitively was cleared, and I scored a 4.5 out of 5. 5 is definitely no match.
There are investigators.
What do you think of Patsy's demeanor there? Is she feeling rightly justified, or is there a little bit of glee sparkling in the background? Is there a bit of duping delight there possibly? Anyway, if ambidextrous is something you never read about as context potentially relevant to the ransom note, how about the fact that Patsy was an artist? And what Patsy was often one to do was copy paintings that she liked. Isn't the psychology of painting a painting that is a copy of another, but also differentiated enough to be one's own work? Isn't that a little like disguising the source of one's inspiration? And painting and paint items aren't otherwise irrelevant to the story. I think one must also consider that pageantry is about presenting and staging a person. There's a lot of staging just in ordinary beauty pageants. And so isn't the psychology of staging very innate? Isn't it very kind of fundamental to someone who's in pageants? And so how would this be any different to that? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.